the president continues to abuse the government and the powers of arrest, of detention, indictment, prosecution, jailing even, to go after critics. This is a diverse list of targets. And while some people are busy and have looked away, and there were Republicans who initially said, well, what's one or two cases? We're going to show you tonight we're way past that. What all the people targeted have in common is that they have criticized Trump, even if they once were Trump officials or Republicans. Today, Don Lemon, a veteran CNN anchor known to so many, who also is an independent journalist, was back appearing in court because the administration continues to push. Now, he was covering a protest at a Minneapolis church where other individuals may have violated the law, including storming a church. But Lemon was covering it. This is a huge deal. He pled not guilty.
This isn't just about me. This is about all journalists, especially here in the United States. For more than 30 years, I've been a journalist, and the power and protection of the First Amendment has been the underpinning of my work. The First Amendment, the freedom of the press, the bedrock of our democracy.
Trump. Simple as that. Doesn't matter if they used to work for him. Doesn't matter if they were fellow Republicans. If you spoke against him, you became a target. Just today, I found out that Don Lemon, yes, the well-known CNN anchor and independent journalist, was back in court. Why? Because this administration simply will not let up. He was out there, doing his job, covering a protest at a church in Minneapolis. Some people at that protest may have crossed a line, allegedly storming the building. It was a serious situation. But Don Lemon was there as a journalist. He pleaded not guilty, and he made one thing crystal clear. This isn't just about him. This is about every single journalist in America. The man has been in journalism for over 30 years, and he knows better than most what's at stake. The First Amendment, freedom of the press, that's not just a legal term, that's the backbone of democracy. When you come after journalists, you're coming after democracy itself. Now let's shift gears, because something happened recently. That honestly even surprised me. And I knew things were going to get messy with Trump back in the White House. But what we've seen in just the last few days, this is a whole new level. We are now officially in impeachment territory. Yes, impeachment. Again. And before you roll your eyes and say, we've heard this before and nothing ever happens, just stay with me for a minute. Because this time is different. This isn't just Democrats venting on cable news. We are talking about formal, fully written articles of impeachment, real legal documents, circulating against both President Donald Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi. This is real. This is serious. When you have cases that specifically target critics of the president, that starts to look like a high crime. That's impeachable territory. 1 or 2 cases. Maybe you can argue about that in good faith. But 5 or 6? That's more than we've seen in decades. Let's put that chart back up as we close out the week, because that number has grown a lot just this week, especially with Don Lemon ending up in court. So the real question becomes, at what number does this officially cross into impeachable offense territory? Now, when it comes to Todd Blanche, I'm honestly not entirely sure. Did he extort a confession out of Ghislaine Maxwell in exchange for better treatment? Maybe that rises to an impeachable offense. Maybe it does. But when it comes to Pam Bondi, that's a completely different conversation. Based on what we saw from her yesterday, she has shown herself to be clearly unfit for office. These cases targeting critics of the president, they absolutely can cross the line into high crimes. And when they do, impeachment becomes a real option. Sure, 1 or 2 cases. Reasonable people might debate that. But 5 or 6? We haven't seen anything like this in decades. As we wrap up this week, let's bring that chart back up, because the numbers have jumped significantly, especially now with Mr. Lemon appearing in court. The big question everyone is asking is, at what point does all this become impeachable? I'm not fully convinced about Blanche yet. Whether the confession he got from Ghislaine Maxwell, in exchange for favorable treatment, actually qualifies as an impeachable offense, I'm still not sure. Maybe it does. But Bondi? That's a totally different story. What we saw from her yesterday left serious doubts about whether she should be in that office at all. And we're not talking about vague accusations here. We're talking about real legal documents with serious charges: obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and turning the entire Department of Justice into what critics are calling a personal hit squad for the president. Just recently, a major public interest group called Free Speech for People stepped forward and urged Congress to impeach Bondi. Their argument? She has committed multiple unconstitutional abuses of executive power. And that's not all. Another organization dropped its own articles of impeachment just days ago, claiming that both Trump and Bondi are obstructing justice and placing the executive branch above Congress by flat-out refusing to hand over documents that Congress has every legal right to see. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. These are just outside watchdog groups. They can't actually impeach anyone. And you're right. Only the House of Representatives has that power. But here's the thing. This is exactly how it always starts. Outside groups write the language. Legal experts build the case. The pressure builds. The media picks it up. Then lawmakers start getting asked about it at town halls and press conferences. And suddenly, someone in Congress has to either act on it or explain to their voters why they won't. That conversation is happening right now. In Democratic strategy meetings, in the hallways of Capitol Hill, on social media. The impeachment articles are spreading like wildfire. Millions of people are reading them, sharing them, and asking themselves, wait, is this actually possible? And the answer is yes. It absolutely is. The real question is whether will it actually happen? Before we get into the politics of it all, let's talk about what Trump and Bondi are actually being accused of. Because these aren't vague, fuzzy accusations. These are specific, detailed, and, if even partially true, explosive. We're talking about the President of the United States directly telling his Attorney General to go after political opponents, by name. On his own social media, he's called for Bondi to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James, former Congressman Adam Schiff, and former FBI Director James Comey. His message couldn't have been clearer. They're guilty. Go get them. Justice needs to happen now. But here's the thing. There's no solid evidence, no grand jury, no investigation that started with a crime. These are people who questioned Trump, who challenged him, who stood in his way. And now, he wants payback. This isn't law enforcement, this is personal revenge. This is a president using the most powerful law enforcement system in the world as a weapon against people he simply doesn't like. If that doesn't make you uneasy, I genuinely don't know what will. Think about it. A president picking up the phone and telling his attorney general, go indict that person. I don't like them. That should alarm every single American, no matter which party you belong to. This is not how America is supposed to work. This is not what the Department of Justice is for, and the fact that in February 2026 I'm having to explain this, that itself is alarming. So let's peel this back layer by layer, because there's a lot here. And as usual, mainstream media is either ignoring the real story or getting distracted by whatever shiny object Trump has thrown out to pull attention away. Let's go back to the beginning, and I promise by the end of this it will all make sense. At the center of all this is Pam Bondi. Now, a lot of people either forgot or never knew about her history with Trump. She was the Attorney General of Florida before Trump picked her to be his Attorney General at the federal level. And here's where it gets really interesting. Back when Trump was running his charity, the Trump Foundation, that foundation made an illegal $25,000 donation to a political group that was supporting Bondi's campaign in Florida. Let's be clear. Charities are not allowed to make political donations. That's illegal. Full stop. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Around that exact same time, Bondi's office was considering launching an investigation into Trump University for fraud. And then, after that illegal donation came in, Bondi's office quietly decided not to investigate. Just like that. Funny how that works, right? So the Attorney General, who received an illegal campaign donation from Trump's charity, suddenly decided that Trump's questionable university wasn't worth looking into. That is the foundation of their relationship. Trump and Bondi have been ethically tied together for years, and now she is running the entire United States Department of Justice for him. She is the top law enforcement official in the country, and critics are making the case, with evidence, that she's not enforcing the law. She's enforcing Trump's Personal grudges. The proof is right in front of us. Trump goes on social media, names specific people, demands they be indicted. And then, almost like clockwork, the DOJ under Bondi starts moving against those exact same people. Letitia James, the New York AG who beat Trump in a massive civil fraud case, suddenly finds herself under federal investigation. Adam Schiff, the congressman who led the first impeachment against Trump, gets targeted. James Comey, the FBI director Trump fired, gets dragged in. These are not coincidences. These are not random. These are coordinated actions that trace directly back to Trump's social media posts, and it doesn't stop at revenge. There's also word that Bondi is chasing conspiracy theories from the Obama-Biden era, claiming there was some coordinated effort by the previous administration to sabotage Trump. Legal experts across the political spectrum are calling this completely baseless. There is no evidence. It looks and feels like political theater, dressed up in legal language, designed to keep Trump's base fired up and his opponents scared. But let's talk about something that might actually be scarier than all the revenge prosecutions, the obstruction. Congress has been trying to get documents from the Department of Justice. They have a constitutional right to oversight. They've been asking, demanding, sending formal requests. Hand over these records. We have every right to see them. And how has the DOJ responded? Delays. Stonewalling. They've released a few documents here and there, just enough to say they're cooperating. But lawmakers say it's all smoke and mirrors. The real information is being hidden. When Congress pushed back and called it what it is, a cover-up, they were essentially told to get lost. Prominent Democrats have officially labeled it a cover-up. There are threats of legal action. The Senate is talking about its duty to respond. And the impeachment articles being circulated point to all of this stonewalling as evidence that Trump and Bondi are placing the executive branch above Congress, above the law, and above the Constitution itself. Now let's get into the political reality. And this is where things get complicated. Do Democrats have enough votes to actually impeach right now? Honestly, probably not. Republicans control the House, and getting Republican members to vote against a Republican president, historically, is nearly impossible. It would take a major dramatic shift in public opinion to make that happen. That said, we are seeing something unusual. Republican voters are starting to distance themselves from Trump in ways we haven't really seen before. Whether that translates into congressional action remains to be seen. It ultimately comes down to this. Are individual members of Congress willing to put their duty to the Constitution above their own political survival? History tells us how that usually goes. But here's what makes this moment different. The fact that these articles exist, that serious, reputable organizations are putting their names on them. That changes the game. Impeachment is back in mainstream conversation, and that means every single member of Congress has to either face these accusations head-on or explain to their voters why they won't. It also gives Democrats a powerful political tool heading into the midterms. Every Republican who wants to keep their seat now has to answer some very uncomfortable questions. Is it okay for a president to tell his attorney general to go after political enemies? Should the DOJ be used as a weapon? Should the executive branch simply ignore Congress? The polls on this are telling. A solid majority of Americans, including a big chunk of independents, are uncomfortable with politically motivated prosecutions. When asked whether the president should have the power to direct the DOJ to go after specific people, the answer is an overwhelming no. About 60% of Americans believe the Justice Department should operate independently from the White House. And Trump's approval ratings? They're sliding. Nothing catastrophic. Just a slow, steady drop. People don't like chaos. They don't like the idea that the government is being used for one person's benefit. Every new headline about Bondi targeting Trump's enemies, every story about the DOJ defying Congress, every experienced official walking out the door, it all adds up. It builds a picture. And that picture doesn't look like governance. It looks like something else entirely. Now let's zoom out. Because this isn't just a Washington story. This affects real people, all of us. If even part of what's described in these impeachment articles is true, and we have a lot of public evidence suggesting it is, then the very system of government we all depend on is being twisted for personal use. The Department of Justice is supposed to be independent. That doesn't mean the Attorney General ignores the President completely, but it does mean criminal investigations have to be based on evidence, not on presidential grudges. You start with the crime. You follow the evidence. You don't start with a person you don't like and then dig around until you find something to charge them with. That difference? That's what separates a fair justice system from a political weapon. What's being alleged here is that Trump and Bondi have completely erased that line. They've gone from investigating crimes to hunting enemies, and once that line gets crossed, once a sitting president can point his finger at political opponents and sic federal law enforcement on them, that damage is incredibly hard to undo. And here's the part that really matters. This isn't just about Trump. This power belongs to whoever is president. Whatever Trump gets away with, the next president can do, and the one after that. So if you're a Republican cheering this on right now because the current targets happen to be Democrats you don't like, think ahead. What happens when a Democratic president does the exact same thing to Republican governors and senators? What happens when a future attorney general starts going after Republicans because a Democratic president tweeted, "They're guilty. Go get them"? Still comfortable with it? This is the precedent being set right now. It's not a partisan issue. It's a constitutional one. It's about whether any president, Democrat or Republican, can use the Justice Department as a personal enforcer. If Congress looks away, if the courts don't step in, if the public doesn't demand accountability, we have a very serious problem on our hands. So where does impeachment actually stand? Right now, the odds of Trump being impeached and removed from office are slim. Republicans control the House. Even if every Democrat votes yes, they still need Republican votes. And in the Senate, you need a 2/3 supermajority to convict and remove. That's a very high bar. There's no realistic scenario right now where enough Republican senators break from their party to hit that number. But, and this is important, impeachment isn't only about removing someone from office. It's about creating a public record. It's about forcing every member of Congress to take a stand. You either accept this behavior or you don't, and that record follows them. Into every election, into every campaign. They can't erase it. The people pushing for impeachment know this. They may not have the votes today, but they're building the case, laying the groundwork, creating a paper trail for history. They want future generations to know. People saw what was happening. People sounded the alarm, and let's not ignore what this means heading into the 2026 midterms. Even if impeachment gets killed in the House before it ever reaches a vote, the conversation alone is damaging for Republicans. Every time voters hear the words impeachment, weaponized DOJ, or political prosecutions, Republicans get pushed onto the defensive, town halls get uncomfortable, constituents start asking hard questions. That pressure lands hardest on Republicans in swing districts, the ones who can least afford to look like they're covering for Trump. Democrats know exactly what they're doing. They're going to keep this conversation alive. They're going to keep making Republicans answer for it. And in districts that Biden or Harris won, candidates are already starting to quietly distance themselves from Trump. The cracks inside the Republican Party are showing. And the timing couldn't be worse. Here's what keeps me up at night. And honestly, it should keep you up too. We've gotten so used to the chaos, that's the real danger. We're living through a moment where a president is openly attacking the justice system, using it against his enemies and treating Congress like it's optional. And a lot of people have just stopped reacting. They hear impeachment articles and shrug. They see politically motivated prosecutions and change the channel. They read about obstruction of justice and scroll right past it. That normalization, that slow, creeping acceptance of things that would have been absolutely unthinkable just 10 years ago, that is more dangerous than any single scandal. More dangerous than any one abuse of power. When a country stops reacting to the misuse of its institutions, when citizens stop holding their leaders accountable, that's not stability. That's surrender. And surrender, no matter where you stand politically, should make every American deeply uncomfortable. So yes, Impeachment articles are circulating against both the president and his attorney general. The Department of Justice is being used as a political weapon. Congress is being defied. Career prosecutors who spent their lives upholding the law are walking out the door rather than be part of what's happening. And our country is slowly getting used to all of it, like a frog sitting in water that's getting hotter and hotter. Keyword. Only question that truly matters right now is this. Will enough people wake up and realize how hot the water has gotten before it's too late? Because the temperature is rising. And shockingly, almost nobody is reaching for the dial.